Welcome to On the Sports Lines. And if you don't think the perfect event doesn't exist, by the way, Jay, we're letting you off the hook with the Aaron Rodgers stuff for a little
Thank you.
bit.
Don't want to talk about it.
Oh, it's coming, but just not now. So you don't think the perfect event doesn't exist? Let me show you the answer to that. It is the Stanley Cup. One pup for all 32 teams showed off, and one pup will be considered the cutest. And in tradition of the puppy ball, figured I would have to mention it because we need our winter stuff. I wanted to do a segment on this, but we denied it. Oh well, this will be on Friday anyway. If you're watching, again, pups galore. What is better than that? You're watching on the Sports Lines now. This is the championship edition. I'm Steven Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan, and before I'm going to sell it right now. I said this across multiple text threads today. I am not happy that Aaron Rodgers is in Pittsburgh. None of my friends who are Steeler fans are happy that Aaron Rodgers is in Pittsburgh. Sean Roman asked a question today if I would rather see Aaron Rodgers lead the Steelers to a Super Bowl. How would that make me feel? I'm like, as much as I don't want Mike Tomlin's streak of never having a losing season to come to an end, I so want Aaron Rodgers to crash and burn and play badly enough that Yinzers are hanging his effigy off the Roberto Clemente bridge and they run him out of the burg on a rail.
Anthony, we didn't even ask him to comment on it. Jesus
Getting
Christ.
it out of the way.
You don't need it. Anthony, introduce yourself.
I'm at the Strait, and I don't know how the hell I'm gonna follow that up, other than to say, "Hey, see, you know what? Week one's gonna be good with the Steelers coming in town to play the Jets."
Uh,
Yeah,
that's
I'm
gonna,
already looking for tickets to go to that game, just for the hell
oh,
of it.
those tickets have shot up right now. So, guys, this is the On the Sports Lines Championship Finals edition. It is the final countdown to determine the champions in two of the four major sports. We'll talk about the teams going for Lord Stanley's Chalice in the NHL and Sir Larry O'Brien's Holy Grail in the NBA. We have a state of the baseball free agent union for our two local teams, plus a playoff where everyone claims to be champs, the college football playoff. If you subscribe to youtube.com/slash on the sports lines and facebook.com/slash on the sports lines, where you can find our shows and you can find information about the show, you can be a winner and champion too. I guarantee it. Once upon a time, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago, it looked like the New York Knicks could be one of those two teams playing in the NBA Finals. However, that was not to be after the Indiana Pacers finished them off on Saturday, beating the Knicks in a very topsy-turvy six-game series. Once upon a time, the Knicks thought Tom Thibodeau would lead this team to the promised land. But after a first Eastern Conference appearance in a quarter of a century and a 226 and 174 record for the Orange and Blue, which post 2000 in the 21st century for the Knicks seems like a miracle, the Knicks decided to part ways with Tom. Just like their hockey co-tenants in MSG, they're also going to look for a new coach, and that'll play into the 2025-26 season. I'm going to change things up a little bit since Jay is the only one not talking about the coaching angle in all of this. Mr. Kaplan, what went wrong in this series for the Knicks to make them lose to the Pacers in six?
You know, the numbers tell the story, specifically the turnovers. You guys remember when we were doing the Boston series, and I said that the negative that the Knicks needed to fix was losing the possession battle, specifically in terms of offensive rebounds and turnovers. In the regular season, the Knicks were a top 10 team in terms of winning the possession battle, but they struggled against Boston. And while they managed to escape the series with the Celtics, it was ultimately their undoing in their Eastern Conference Finals loss to the Pacers, a team that ranked in the lower half of the association in that stat during the regular season. The Knicks won the offensive rebounding battle in every game, and by decidedly large margins in some of them. For the series, they grabbed 28.3% of their offensive, 28.3 offensive rebound percentage to Indiana's 19.1, leading to double-digit second chance point totals. For the series, they averaged 11.5 offensive rebounds per game and converted those into 16.5 second chance points per game. But they averaged 15.5 turnovers per game, which Indiana converted into a whopping average of 23.3 points per game. On the flip side, they allowed Indiana to grab 7.2 offensive rebounds per game, and convert them into 13.7 second chance points. That means they're scoring a bucket almost every time they grab their own miss. Winning the offensive rebound battle, but they only turned Indiana over an average of 12.5 times per game and only converted that into an average of 10.2 points per game. And if you take away game 5, where they forced 20 Indiana turnovers and converted them into 15 points, those averages dipped to 11 turnovers a game and 9.2 points per game off those turnovers. Overall, the Knicks were actually +8 in the possession battle for the series, but if you again remove game 5, they're even with the Pacers in that battle. And if you dive a little deeper, and you know I did, there was only one game. Ironically, it was game 2, which they lost by 5, where the Knicks had more second chance points scored than points conceded on turnovers. Overall for the series, they were -41 in that battle of their biggest strength versus their biggest cause for concern, with the biggest example of it being the Game 6 series clincher, where the Knicks converted their 13 offensive rebounds into 15 second chance points, but committed 18 turnovers, which the Pacers converted into 34 points. That is a whopping -19, and that's what did the Knicks in, largely due to a combination of Indiana's ball pressure being relentless and the Knicks' transition defense, which allowed 17.7 fast break points per game in the series, being non-existent. Tibbs said this, quote, "Every possession is important. Where can you steal points from? You have to think that way throughout the course of the season." The Knicks outscored the Pacers 99-83, +16 in second chance points. That was as expected, especially with Mitchell Robinson putting up an 18.1 offensive rebound percentage by himself. The Pacers as a team were at 19.1%, at 19.1. But the Knicks were outscored in points off turnovers 140-61. That is a whopping -78. And that, more than any egregious defensive mistakes by Karl Anthony Towns or Jalen Brunson only assisting on 5 of Towns' field goals, is what did the Knicks in, and no doubt played a role in Tibbs getting fired.
Well, one thing that's actually interesting about the offensive rebounds, while they are a plus, the one thing Indiana does well is they're the Indianapolis 500 when it comes down the court. You miss that rebound, you're done. And that's one of the reasons why. And we can get into the defense a lot in this fight and the Brunson Town stuff, but there's a lot of time to talk about that, especially because there's a new system coming in 2025. Anthony, we've talked about it over the last few weeks. You've mentioned it on this show. You had a lot of doubt in Tibbs, Tom Thibodeau being the guy to take the Knicks to the next level, and you and Leon Rose apparently talked to each other in a mind melt because on Tuesday, Tibbs got fired as he was starting, by the way, a new 3-year, $30 million contract going into next year in the business of basketball. What went wrong, and why is Tibbs gone, and is this deserved? Spoiler alert, you're going to say yes.
I've been saying this for the last 2 years, that Tom Thibodeau was not the guy that was going to get the Knicks over that hump. Look, Tom Thibodeau deserves a lot of flowers, a lot of roses. He helped revitalize this franchise, considering what it was when he took the coaching job, got them back to the playoffs, back-to-back 50-win seasons. First time since the mid-90s that has happened. Obviously, conference final appearance first time since 2000. So there's a lot. So obviously, he deserves a lot of credit for that. But anyone who has truly watched the Knicks this season in particular could have saw the wheels coming off prior to the Indiana series. There was obviously issues with overplaying the starting lineup. I mean, literally all 5 starters was in the top 20 in minutes played per game, with Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart in the top 5. That's number one. Number two, look, the Knicks didn't have the greatest bench in the world, but of course we don't know that because he never played them. When you have a former Big East Player of the Year and Tyler Collette, whose whole reputation is three-point shooting, defending, and ball handling, and he doesn't play, and that's something you're probably needed against an Indiana Pacers team that pressures the basketball, might have been a good idea to maybe play him a little more in the regular season. The regular season is the time to experiment with lineups. not game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals, and you're already down 2 games tonight. Speaking of conference finals, go back towards the end of game 1 when the Patriots was making that run. The moment Aaron Naismith hits that 3 and cuts you to 6, you're supposed to immediately call a timeout. You have 3 in your back pocket to settle your team down. He doesn't do that, and it's clear that the team kind of unraveled. There was definitely miscommunication problems. You saw OG Anunoby and Carter Towns kind of going back and forth during that meltdown. Inexcusably not fouling Obi Toppin on overtime and forcing him to make 2 free throws. Game 6. Look, Rick Carlisle is a good head coach already, but he coached circles around Tom Thibodeau in this series, and there were literally times Thibodeau looked literally clueless, has to make adjustments on the fly. And someone said this online, and I give Ashley Cole Smith actually the one who said this on CBS Sports. Tom Thibodeau's coaching strategy follows a particular script each game. The problem is when days doesn't go according to the script, Tom Thibodeau doesn't really do a good job of being able to adjust and manage the game on the fly as it happens. And we've seen coaches be able to, the better coaches be able to do that on the fly. Rick Carlisle, for example, we've seen Eric Spoelstra do it for years. We've seen Steve Kerr, and let's go on and on. But Tom Thibodeau just seems too stubborn to want to pivot away from his beliefs as a coach to what may actually help the team. And there's been plenty of times this season, and Rabbi, you know this, where I have said the Knicks has won games just pure on talent alone, and in spite of their head coach. Many times they just had a better talent during the regular season. You get away with that in the regular season. In the playoffs, it is about X's and O's, execution, and being able to strategize from game to game to game. The problem with that is, against the Detroit series, they barely escaped that series in part because Jalen Brunson is just that dude. Against Boston, they came back from 20 points down, but there were reasons why they were down 20 in the first 2 games. You stuck with a starting lineup that had the worst plus-minus rating of any starting lineup through the regular season and the postseason, and you're continually going through slow starts. Clearly, nothing was gelling. But then the coup de grace, as it was, the Athletic coming out with the article immediately almost after the Knicks were eliminated. And Rabbi, I know, but I'm
going to respond to this.
That pretty much all that did was confirm what, at least with my own 2 eyes, following the Knicks this season, kind of saw miscommunications. There was inner grumblings going on with the players. Remember, Mikal Bridges publicly came out, complained about the amount of minutes that he was playing. There was obviously the miscommunication, the grumblings about Carter Towns being a defensive liability. Just going to a switching style defense when you haven't played that style all season long. It worked against Boston because they didn't have them to scout it with. You can't do that against a team like Indiana that always looked for mismatches. And I felt like that was a mistake that only exasperated the defensive liabilities of Carter Towns and a only 6'2" Jalen Brunson. So there was a lot of games that went wrong, but ultimately, if you watch this team the last 2 years, the conference finals was just a cherry on top. But you can just see the lack of offensive creativity. Sometimes the defense struggles this season. The Knicks had hit a wall with how far teams could take them, and also on top of that, when you talk about the frustration of the players that were just kind of simmering and building up. It's not a surprise to anyone who follows the Knicks. I know the mainstream sports media and casual fans are kind of surprised and saying, why would you make this move? But Leon Rose basically read the room, just like I have been reading the room for 2 years. Tom Thibodeau is a good coach, but there's a reason why he was working with Chicago and Minnesota. He's a good coach that unfortunately can't elevate his own philosophy to being a great coach. And the Knicks right now, the Knicks are looking around and seeing that the Eastern Conference competition It's not running away. It's coming back to them. It's like the horse race, and it's raining all of a sudden. So now everyone is on the even playing field. Guns go fastest horse in the race because of everything that's going on with the rest of the conference. And I think the Knicks and Leon Rose in particular just had to sound the alarm and realize we have a very short window with an opportunity to win a championship and take that next step. And we just can't waste another year if Tom Thibodeau is not going to be able to do what Tom Kaplan did and make the necessary adjustments professionally and even personally to try to get that team over the hump.
I understand completely what you're saying on this, and I completely understand everything. We've talked about this ad nauseum. By the way, Tyler Kolek. So if you're going to play the players on the bench, at least remember how it actually sounds like. And again, he's a rookie. He's going to take time. And a lot of teams have 7 to 8 man rotations. And the Knicks are strapped in a lot of areas when it comes to that. That's more roster construction than everything else. Mm-hmm. That Athletic article is an interesting article, but I do think it's a lot more of the now they tell us piece. It's like, oh, we put this all in one little thing, and then all of a sudden, hey, let's release it. And honestly, what I got from that article was a team that literally got deconstructed right before training camp. It's like all of a sudden,
you constructed, not deconstructed, constructed.
Well, it got deconstructed with Randall and DiVincenzo, and then it got constructed again right before training camp. So it's reconstructed technically.
There you go.
Think about it, but still. And that's the way you had to deal with this season. Now, I'm not saying I think I was 50-50 on Tom Thibodeau being the coach of this team. And I do think he is a very good coach. But now when you get the little, oh, he can't get this team far and this team to the promised land, and everyone believes that kind of ruins his own coaching career. But that's not neither here nor there. And as a Knicks fan, I don't think people give two flips about that. But I do think one thing is for sure that if you look at the 4 major sports, hockey, basketball, football, baseball, I do think basketball is almost 4th in the list of stuff that the coach decides on and the coach goes to. But I've always said, you can't fire the players. So the first thing you think of if the ship be sinking is get rid of the head man and get a new man out there. But I will say this before I go into my angle. There was a situation in the mid-90s with a coach, with a team that was mid-2000s, and the team that was really talented and kind of hit the wall. This team made the conference finals, and it wasn't good enough. They fired the head coach, and they brought in a championship coach the next year, and they won the title. That coach that got fired was Rick Carlisle, who was right here in a 4-point game in the conference finals. Larry Brown got the head coaching job, and he got into 2 straight finals after that. So there is a precedent for that. With that being said, it's time to find a new head man at MSG. So first of all, I'm going to say what you have with this team is, again, the Celtics will not have Jason Tatum next year, although I think roster construction, they're still pretty damn good. The Cavs, they are really probably the best team, in my opinion, in the East. They just did not hit those expectations in the playoffs. You have this Pacers team that's going to be right there. But you have a Knicks team that, although they're going to be hampered a little bit, they still have a little room to improve the bench. You have a decision really on what to do with Josh Hart, because I think that's the most expendable piece in terms of lineup and what you can get back. It's going to be a lot of interesting pieces. You have a lot to work with the Knicks. It's not like this team is crestfallen or anything like that. This team is probably a much more desirable of a place than Phoenix, which is really the only other spot right now with a notable head coaching vacancy, because a lot of the other head coaches that got fired in Memphis and Denver, their replacements and interims became head coaches. They didn't have to look anywhere else. With that being said, I got 3 names for you, and I want to go through them in the order of which I think that they are going to be the head coach. Mike Malone is the first name that's going to be out there. If you want a coach to get you to the next level, how about a coach that got the team to the next level 2 years ago, even though he just got fired right before the postseason due to issues at management? Now, Malone is going to be the first name that comes to mind, represented by CAA. So that's a little bit of a problem, but Leon Rose runs this team, so you have an agent and agents dealing with each other. Former Knicks assistant, his father, Brendan Malone, had 3 separate tenures as a Knicks assistant, and he was even born in Queens when his dad was still coaching in high school. However, if you're going to get Thibodeau out of here, you want someone who is a little different than Thibodeau, and they overlapped as Knicks assistants, and we were talking about the way that they use that 5-man rotation. The most used 5-man rotation this year was not the Knicks. It was Denver. Neither of these teams are experimental with lineups. That's one of the reasons why Malone got fired to begin with. They only really played 7 guys, and they don't really...
I got to disagree with you there, Rabbi. Part of the reason Malone would not go deep into his bench is that since they won their title, his GM has basically allowed the key guys from that bench to leave.
He has
pay them, and the guys he replaced them with, Malone was not comfortable using. That is the reason why the starters had to play so many minutes.
Okay, you actually said something, but I'm going to go back to Anthony's point of what he said before. What you're saying is that he wasn't comfortable with his bench. That's the same way Tibbs was not comfortable with his bench either. So you're basically saying to itself, it's like, oh, you have 10 guys, why don't you play them all? Same thing with Denver, although their guys they didn't really have some of the level of talent out there, and the Knicks didn't really have that level of talent once he got past Precious Achiuwa. So it is kind of the same situation.
So begs the question, why would you bring in somebody who, if you think about it, is almost a carbon copy?
Well, this is exactly what my point is, and that's what I'm literally trying to get to you now. Denver's offense was having Nikola Jokic, and the Knicks can't run the same sets that the Nuggets did because they don't really rely on a big man. They never also turned Jokic's passing gifts into a constant 3-point production. Denver ranked 30th in 3-point attempt rate this season, and the Knicks were only 28th. That's not really going to help out too much. Both are old school defensive coaches that still have a lot to work on with defense. Okay. Johnny Bryant is the next name that's out there, a younger head coach, and we've talked about it. That's going to be the name that I think is going to I don't know if he's going to end up getting the job, but I think there's a possibility of that. Now, he's young, he's eager. He was Thibodeau's assistant until this season, and then he became the associate head coach in Cleveland, who had the second best record in the NBA. Now, he is a finalist for that other job in Phoenix. Good timing if you want to make the move now, but you don't know what his strategy is. It's a first-time head coach. The one example that I can think of in here is Joe Mazzulla in Boston. He was literally named second row Joe for a reason in some places. He was a second row assistant at the 2022-23 season. Udoka had the personal problems, and Will Hardy left for Utah. And if either of those things don't happen, Mazzulla is probably still not a head coaching job. He might be eventually, but he isn't this team's head coaching job. But I think it is a big name. Basketball genius in a lot of people's minds. And if you want a sense of continuity with kind of not having continuity, that's the guy.
Yeah. Rabbi, here's my problem with that is that I can't, if James Dolan and Leon Rose think they need a guy to take them to the NBA finals, which is the next step, I can't see them giving that responsibility to a first-time head coach, even if on paper the resume says he's a head coaching candidate in waiting and should be getting a job soon. I can't see it happening here.
The problem with that is I can understand that completely, but I feel like with the hire of JJ Redick in LA and the success kind of that he had this season, I do think there is. See, here's my problem with all of this before I get Taylor Jenkins, by the way, was the other guy, and I think he would be a very good head coach. He was 250.
Oh, please, I want to hear your
It's not a lot because I really don't think unless Jenkins does well with interviewing, he's going to get the job at 250, 214, 3 playoff appearances in 6 years. Also, like Mike Malone, got a kind of a raw deal at the end of the job because a lot of the players were just not meshing with his team. But when you think about Bryant, I do think there's just a lot of unknown in a guy with not a lot of head coaching experience out there. Like I said, the Ajoka move to Boston, the Missoula move after that. I know he had a terrible series last year, but he managed the team perfectly after his success, after his Eastern Conference Finals appearance in year one. I just think out of the names that I've heard out there, Jeff Van Gundy, absolutely not. Let's not go there. Let's not go there. And honestly, I know I've heard Mike Budenholzer out there, but the way his time with the Bucks was, especially in the 2023 season against the Heat, and just the way he was on that sinking ship this year with the Suns, I know there's a lot of factors into that. I just think like anybody is really in play here. There's a lot of retreads around the league. I think sometimes people are comfortable with spots, but I think looking at it, I think even though Malone and Tibbs are kind of cut from the same cloth, if you want the championship experience, I think that's where you have to go. At least that's in my opinion. I just think there's just a lot of stuff out there.
I'm going to throw one more name at you because you guys have. I want to hear from both of you. It's being bandied about. I don't give it a whole crap ton of credence because he's never ever entertained it before. But Jay Wright's name is being thrown out there, and I think for no other reason than the Villanova connection to Brunson and Hart and Bridges. How much credence and how do you guys give any of that? To me, it's noise and nonsense because, like I said, I think Jay Wright retired from coaching for a reason. I think he's really comfortable, in his college basketball gig at CBS. I can't see him giving that up to take on the headache that is working for James Dolan.
Here's the thing, though. I'll start with this, and I'll let you lead off, Anthony, because I actually want to. Here's the point with this. Right, I think you have the exact notion on Right, and I also do not like the fact of a college head coach going into the next level, especially in this situation, which is basically championship or bust. I actually left off a name that probably would be kind of a little bit of a shocker there that I've also heard about, Dan Hurley. But I think if he didn't go to the Lakers last year, I think he's not coming here. I know this is a closer place, but it's understandable, the connection, but I think both are happy where they are. And I like the idea sometimes of college coaches, Anthony, staying in a college system, especially because college does have a lot of real benefits going in, especially in terms of how you could make that UConn program even bigger, especially with all the stuff next year. It's going to be a madhouse in the Big East, especially between St. John's and UConn, but that's for another story in another time. But Anthony, it's a very interesting situation, and I can even see a name that we haven't even mentioned here, and for the sake of time, we don't really need to do that, coming in and getting this job.
Yeah, I know I throw plenty of names get thrown out there. Somebody even suggested Mark Jackson, but there's a reason why Mark Jackson got let go. Yeah, Mark Jackson, I don't think even interested in coaching at this point. I've been kind of a Mike Malone person because I think this if you're looking for championship, looking for the next step in championship, he is the guy that does have the championship experience. And granted, he's not going to have Nikola. I think I talked to somebody. He's not going to have Nikola Jokic if he takes the Knicks on, but he does have a good passing big man in Karl-Anthony Towns who can get the best out of. Hey, look, we didn't think much of Nikola Jokic neither, and then look what he blossomed into over time. So there was a caveat to that. Think about this. He'll get Jalen Brunson. He had to deal with Jamal Murray, who was basically a point guard who can be ball dominant at times. They managed to make it work. And yes, like Jay said, the bench in Denver was decimated, and the front office, just like the Knicks, didn't do a whole lot to replenish it. But at the same time, with in the case of Tom Thibodeau didn't even try on some nights. And even you mentioned Preston Achua. Achua was a big part of the team and the bench on the regular season. He was pretty much out of the rotation during the Indiana series and only playing because of foul trouble issues with Mr. Robinson and Karl-Anthony Towns. And even I have suggested, okay, if you're going to play hack-a-match, why are you playing Precious Achiuwa, who is a bit of a better offensive threat, who can make free throws, so that takes the hack and miss option off the table. So there was a lot of things that Tim's coaching didn't help the Knicks in certain situations, and there were times when the Knicks didn't, because of talent, didn't win in spite of that. But as far as the coaching that needs to come back, get a coach that can come in and and help the Knicks, you gotta kind of go with the experience. Jenkins got a bad deal because I feel like the front office enabled a lot of the players, particularly John Morant. And when you do that, you kind of undercutting the head coach as far as any kind of authority he would have in the locker room. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see who they bring in. If you're gonna bring in a different, someone who's different from Tom Thibodeau's defensive first strict coaching style, I don't know if you would go with a first year head a coach with no experience, especially in New York of all places, to try to win a championship. So like I said, a lot of the names I get thought are just nothing but noise and just kind of get clicks. But it is going to be an interesting couple of weeks. Cause I mean, the draft is literally at the end of the month, so I would assume they'll want to get their head coach hired as soon as possible if needed.
Yeah, you'd like to have him in place before the draft.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting next week or so to see what candidates pop up and eventually who they settle on.
It'll be interesting. You probably want it before free agency because I don't know what first round picks the Knicks have over the next 5-6 years. Okay. So now we do have to crown an NBA champion, and two of the most favorite teams of Madison Avenue are going to do that. That's the Indiana Pacers and Oklahoma City Thunder. Two teams who had a combined 49-115 record 3 seasons ago. A finals matchup that is the closest distance in miles between arenas, little over 788, in over 44 years. One team might win their first NBA title. The other would win their first in 46 years, Seattle Supersonics, hi, Seattle, and it would be the first in their actual location of OKC. All right, Anthony, let's talk about your favorite team, the Indiana Pacers. The Eastern Conference champion and plus 700 underdog going into this series. Indiana Pacers will win this series if...
Well, they continue to follow the formula of playing fast. I mean, they are from the home of the Indianapolis 500, and they've been playing that style all postseason, of course, right now. We can make the argument that as long as they hang around the final 4 minutes of a game, that'll be a strategy to win.
Yes. They are a 48-minute team.
As the Knicks found out, the game is never over with the Indiana Pacers. With the Knicks, the Cavs, and the Bucks found out that the game is never over. But yeah, they gotta play fast. They gotta play up tempo. They outscore their playoff opponents by 8.5 points on fast break opportunities, according to synergy tracking. And they basically ran the Knicks out of the building in the game since closer. Another thing too, there's 3 simple ways. The Pacers can't lose a turnover battle. Of course, tonight they had 19 in the first half, which is a record for the most since 1998. So they gotta definitely cut down the turnovers in that regard. Secondly, they gotta shoot the 3-pointer. They have won the 3-point battle by a pretty considerable margin, getting into the Eastern against the Eastern Conference teams. Hold on just one moment. I want to finish my thought because it's the final seconds.
I mean, they're good at fouls, so...
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, can you continue?
Yeah. Okay, and yes, and they gotta win the 3-point battles. They shooting 40% from 3 for the season.
Caught it late. Sorry.
Yeah. You just saw what I just saw, basically.
Yeah, I just caught it late. My apologies.
And the Pacers have to win the close games, which is if you're watching game 1, that's kind of a Captain Obvious right about now. But yes, look, Tyrese Halliburton, it's a key to the series, and because he is kind of the engine that runs the end of the Pacers up tempo offense, and the fact that he is able to to get other guys involved. But he can't just have disciplinary acts. For as good as he's been this postseason, he has had some duds. You think about game 2 against the Knicks, he didn't do a whole deal, even though the Pacers won that game. You think about game 5, where he was just dreadful in that game, and to his credit, he took the onus on himself to play better in the following game, which he did in games, and having that big fourth quarter to kind of put the Knicks away. Pascal Siakam is another guy that's going to be key to the series because more than not, he's going to draw smaller defenders. The Eastern Conference Finals MVP has got to continue to be aggressive, to be able to attack and to take advantage of the mismatches when he gets the opportunity to do so. But yeah, that's the Pacers got to continue to push the tempo and play to their strength, because Oklahoma City's trapping defense in the half court is just incredible, and you don't want to give the Thunder a chance to have to set up their defense.
And as you said, they're currently up 1 with literally milliseconds.
Yeah, I want to know the 13 players who voted Tyrese Halliburton to be the most overrated player in the league.
They're done.
I want their names publicized, just like you want the one guy that don't vote for Unanimous MVP to be made public. I want those 13 guys publicized and ridiculed for this.
Not until we get the Jeter voter, who didn't vote him for the Hall of Fame in there. That's my first thing. All right, Jay, the other half of this first NBA Finals matchup in 18 years that didn't have either team win a Christmas Day game, I included it. The OKC Thunder will win this series if.
I mean, it comes down to this. Can they continue their relentless defensive effort, forcing turnovers and winning the possession battle? Look, we know the thing that most folks will focus on for the Thunder is their ability to score the basketball, led by, the regular season MVP, SGA, and All-Star Jalen Williams. In the regular season, OKC was number 4 in the NBA points per game, 120.5. Number 3 in offensive rating, 120.3. Number 6 in true shooting percentage, 59.3%. Number 7 in effective field goal percentage, 56. And had the best point differential in NBA history at plus 12.9. They've upped all that in the playoffs coming into the finals. They've outscored their opponents by 19.8 points per game in their 12 wins, and that includes 5 wins by 25 or more points. And they have the best point differential by any team heading into the finals, plus 10.8, since the Cavs and Warriors back in 2017. We can only hope for a finals that's that epic this time. But
it was 2016, by the way. That finals was the epic one.
Oh, my bad. The rematch wasn't bad either. But if they're going to bring the Larry O'Brien Trophy back to OKC, it'll be because of their defense, which is a blend of relentless ball pressure, swarming help, elite playmaking, and togetherness that is especially good at forcing turnovers and converting them into points. OKC had the NBA's number 1 defense during the regular season, and they've gotten better as the postseason has gone on. They've lowered their defensive rating from 107.5 during the regular season to 106.2 in the postseason. That number 1 defense has 7 of the top 10 players in defensive rating this postseason. Their entire starting 5, SGA, Williams, Lou Dort, Chet Holmgren, and Isaiah Hartenstein, plus their bench attack dogs, Cason Wallace and Alex Caruso, who are actually the top 2 players in defensive rating so far in the postseason. 5 OKC players, SGA, Williams, who was second all-team defense, Dort, who was first-team all-defense, along with those previously mentioned bench attack dogs, Wallace and Caruso, are averaging more than 1 steal per game in the playoffs coming into the finals. But where this defense really wreaks havoc is with their ability to force turnovers. OKC was number 1 in the regular season, forcing 17 turnovers per game and converting them into 21.8 points per game. They've increased those numbers in the postseason, forcing 18 turnovers a game and converting them into 23.8 points per game. That would be ridiculous enough, but OKC's offense has the lowest turnovers per game, 11.6, of any team that's gotten past the first round. That plus 6.4 turnovers per game margin would be the highest for a team that played multiple playoff series since the association began tracking team turnovers in 1973-74. Are you a fan of stocks? No, not the ones on Wall Street. The NBA's collective steals plus block stat. Check this out. OKC has 170 plus steals and 80 plus blocks through the first 3 series of their playoff run. That hasn't been done by a team in over 30 years. 77 of OKC's 172 steals have come from their bench. That's almost 45%, which ties them for the most steals by a team's bench in a single postseason since steals were first tracked by the association back in 1973-74. Those deals have led to 380 points off turnovers for the Thunder this postseason, and that's the most by any team entering the finals in the NBA's play-by-play era, which began right around the year 2000. Now, that defense's ability to convert turnovers, to create turnovers, convert them into points, coupled with the ability to take care of the ball on offense, has allowed OKC to own the possession battle in the playoffs, just as they did in the regular season, despite their offensive rebounding deficiency. In the playoffs, they're collecting just 25.5% of their own misses while allowing opponents to collect 27.3% of their missed shots. In the regular season, OKC had a plus 435 turnover margin, the best differential since the league began tracking turnovers. That ridiculous margin has helped to offset their minus 81 rebound margin, which led to 4.3 extra possessions per game and a plus 354 possession margin. Only the Rockies at 4.5 per game and plus 369 margin were better in the possession battle during the regular season. Timberwolves star Anthony Edwards described the Thunder's defense, which rarely allowed him to operate in space in the Western Conference Finals, as, quote, 15 puppets on one string. OKC head coach Mark Daigneault said the reason his defense is so good at forcing turnovers is, quote, we've got some monsters on the perimeter and rim deterrents at the rim. That forces teams deeper into possessions, throwing more passes, all of those things that increase the exposure risk of turnovers. So, how did all that shake out in game one? Well, they forced 25 turnovers. They had 14 steals, but they only converted it into 11 points. That's more than 50% less than their average coming into the finals. They committed only 7 turnovers, well below their 11.6 mark. And they only allowed that to be converted into 4 points. They were -3 in the offensive rebounding battle. They lost to the Pacers 13-10, but they were only -1 in second chance points, 11-12. So therefore, overall, they were plus 15 in extra possessions. And yet somehow, Indiana came all the way back from a double-digit deficit to steal game one on the road. Bottom line, the Thunder's ability to, A, force turnovers and convert them into points, and 2, control the turnover differential will be huge keys for them if they're going to win this series, which will be, as the rabbi said, and I put it in here because I didn't know if you were going to use it, the first NBA final since 2007 where neither team played on Christmas Day during the regular season. Hat tip to Yahoo Sports for that one. Didn't shake out their way tonight, but the fact that they won the possession battle is something they need to keep doing because the numbers indicate that it'll work out for them in the end. Then again, this is the NBA Finals. Anything can happen.
13-10 on the offensive rebounds, but 43-29 on the defensive rebound side for the Indiana Pacers. 3 double-digit Indiana Pacer rebounders, none for the Thunder. One of the reasons why it's 1-0, there was only one time when the Pacers led tonight, and that was at the end of that final score,
Yes.
111,
By the way,
110.
Tyrese Halliburton, I'm talking about Tyrese Halliburton having a disappearing act. 6 of his 14 was in the fourth quarter, including that game-winning shot.
He knows when to have his appearing act, by the way.
He has a flip in dramatics, obviously.
All right, so considering we had all of this positive stuff to say about the Thunder, we can say it in, but they lost. I will continue on the positive stuff with the defense of the Thunder, because if you want to talk about the defense of the Thunder, let's talk about the X factors on both sides. The defense of the Thunder starts with Mr. Lou Dort, named to the NBA defensive first team this year, and Jalen Williams, his teammate in OKC, said he should have earned that honor like 17 times this year.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the all-defensive players. 1.1 steals and 0.5 blocks per game. Didn't capture the Hall effect, though. The Thunder are first in defensive rating at 106.6, and he is second himself in NBA matchup difficulty, according to Crafted NBA, at 96.8. Dort has a habit of getting the league's best scorers in a tizzy in what is called as, in my favorite name, the torture chamber. And the torture chamber has really done some well. Offensively, he's pretty good too. 10 points, 4.1 rebounds, 1.6 assists. Not his best scoring season. 3 years ago, he averaged 17.2 points per game. They were not good 3 years ago, by the way. He had his fewest amount of shots this year in 258 since 2021, he had 247 attempts. 43.5% from the field, 41.2% from three, but you're getting him for his defense only. I think a lot of times before, in the days when he was basically a rookie with Chris Paul on the team, remember that year? That was that one surprise little spike year until they went right back down the year after. He became a star. Now he knows his role. Tonight, Dort did play 36 minutes, shot 5 of 10, 15 points, -3, though, on the court. And again, you're not going to win a lot of games, I feel like, when your best scorer scores 21 points more than your second best scorer. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander scored 38, Jalen Williams scored 17. So we'll see what happens. But Lou Dort, if he continues the defensive pressure for all 4 quarters, the Thunder should still be in good shape in this series, even though they just lost home court. On the other side, I'm doing a first. I didn't tell anybody. I'm changing my pick to Obi Toppin as my X factor for the Pacers. We talked about now what Anthony really should have said when he was talking about players that Tom Thibodeau could still use off his bench. That guy is one of those guys that he can still have off his bench or in a starting role now. When they let him go 2 years ago in the offseason to Indiana, he's been good at certain times, but he's now all of a sudden getting himself kind of into shape. He scored 15 points in the he scored 18 points in the finale against the Knicks. 18 points, 7-11 from 7-11 field goals, 2 for 3, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks over 25 minutes. And he's there also if Miles Turner is struggling, which he has at times. And he only had 15 points in that game for the second time this postseason, and that was the Pacers' 16th postseason game. So it seems like Obi Toppin is kind of getting into shape. He did that again tonight, which is why I changed the pick. He had another 25 minutes out there, and he had the best plus-minus out of anybody in the entire game, tied with Aaron Nesmith with a plus 13. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, shooting a blistering 6 of 9 on the field goal, including 15 of those 17 points from 3, 5 for 8 from 3. Toppin is a pretty invaluable player. He was essentially the sixth man tonight. He had 25 minutes off the bench. TJ McConnell had 17. If you can get Obi Toppin going and you can get a pretty good starting 5, 6 double-figure scorers tonight, by the way, for the Pacers. No one scored more than 20, but again, you have 6 double-figure scorers. You don't need a lot more in that case because you're already getting about 70 or 80 points. Toppin is going to be a huge key, and if he continues to hit the numbers that he's hit over these last 2 games, Pacers might do the damn thing and win their first ever NBA title. They have nothing to lose in this series. I won't say they're happy to be here, but the Thunder want to put the exclamation point on a season that's seen them have 80 wins. Not a lot of teams have 80 wins, regular and post, going into the finals. I think it's only happened like 6 or 7 times before. I need to look at that official stat, but it's insane how good the Pacers can be just when they're 1 or 2 people on their bench are performing at their best. And if Obi Toppin's performing at their best, look out.
Yeah, you know what? To add to that, Obi Toppin hit some big shots in the second and third quarters when it looked like Oklahoma City was going to go on one of those patented runs and really put the game away. Of course, with the Pacers, for 48 minutes, there was no such thing as putting the game away. But Obi Toppin hit a couple of big threes, kind of kept the Pacers hanging around until they were able to make that run. I mean, yeah, you said it. I mean, this is a bench player that Tom Thibodeau probably could have used a little bit. We forget 2 years ago in the playoffs after Julius Randle went down with the ankle injury, Obi Toppin stepped up and had a big game 5 in the clinch against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So he has a history of stepping up in the postseason. Of course, we've seen it throughout this playoffs and tonight. He has improved dramatically with his outside shooting from three. I think the Pacers system and playing with Tyrese Halliburton has definitely helped that along as far as him being able to be more of a floor spacer and still be a high flyer when given the opportunity. So yes, you're 100% right. Obi Toppin is a key coming off the bench. He's one of several key guys apparently coming off the bench, but as a guy who can stretch the floor and rebound and defend, particularly subbing for Pascal Siakam or even Miles Turner. Yes, he's pretty much a 1A as far as key players coming off the bench for Indiana.
And he is, and you guys kind of alluded to it, but I'm basically going to flat out say it. Obi Toppin was basically the first, in my mind, he was exhibit A of Tom Thibodeau, as Anthony said, his unwillingness to move off of his script, because if Tibbs had been more open to playing lineups that had Randall and Toppin on the floor together, things might have turned out a little bit differently. You never know.
Yeah, but unfortunately, this is where we are. But it's nice to see that at least two Knicks.
Hey, Indiana is the happy recipient of something Tibbs would not do.
But Toppin is still playing a bench role, but he's just playing in a more important role.
Right,
but yeah,
exactly.
No, I'm not saying, but he's playing 25 minutes.
It's about a coach recognizing what a guy brings to his team, and putting him in a role where he feels good about the role, which leads to him being more successful at that role. And I don't get the feeling that Toppin doesn't seem like he was in that situation when he was in.
He wasn't. He absolutely wasn't.
Putting out his best effort every time he stepped on the floor. Tibbs put a ceiling on him, which was probably unfair, and it ultimately is the reason why Obi Toppin's no longer a New York Knick.
And why Tom Thibodeau is also no longer a New York Knick. Okay. They say familiarity breeds contempt as we go to the ice. And I got to say, that's actually pretty accurate. Nothing wrong with that. Not seeing anything wrong with that. We're all good. The Florida Panthers and Edmonton Oilers, who, by the way, had no home ice advantage in any round of these playoffs, are the fourth modern rematch post-70s in the Stanley Cup Finals. Canadians took care of business in both 77 and 78 against the Bruins, but the two most recent matchups, the Islanders and Oilers in 83 and 84, and the Red Wings and the Penguins, the last one in 08 and 09, they were both splits, and the Panthers do not like sharing, so something's got to give. Game one went to the Oilers 4-3 in overtime, and if you thought a 7-game series was going to get with these two teams last year, they didn't go to any bonus hockey basically in 2024, so that's a good start. All right, Anthony, let's start with the three-time defending conference champion Panthers. They took care of the 102-point Lightning, went the distance to slay the 108-point Maple Leafs, and gave the Carolina Hurricanes that familiar Eastern Conference losing feeling to get here. At least they won a game, though.
This time, snap the
hang the banner. 15 losses in a row. Done. Unfortunately, speaking of streaks, for the first time in this 3-year run for Florida, 21 games, they lose the game after leading after one. Anthony, the Panthers will come back, raise Lord Stanley's chalice again if.
Well, they gotta go back to doing what led to them being so dominant in the conference finals. That's playing physical and taking advantage of being opportunistic. When they had the opportunity, whether it's the special teams, the power play, high percentage shots, setting things up, particularly in the slot. But when you watch game one, it was after the first period, after Brad Marchand gave a 2-1 lead. By the way, for the people out there who did not watch the game, because I did read an article about the ratings for the Stanley Cup Final not being that great. Part of it because it's been on cable. Shame on you, because you missed one hell of a hockey game.
Really good.
Without question.
Good.
Amazing. I'll sign me up for 7 games of this.
Yes.
Okay, just like we saw tonight in Oklahoma City. If you give me this for 7 games, sign me up. But You look at the Florida Panthers after they got that 2-1 lead, and after they went up 3-1, they kind of sat back, which is uncharacteristically for the Florida Panthers, who plays aggressive, who was attacking almost. They never take their foot off the gas pedal. As the Carolina Hurricanes found out the hard way, and that ball game series. It was just like the shot that the Hurricanes got a game in that series was more of the shocker than the fact that Florida won that series as convincing as they did. But yes, they sat back. They weren't as aggressive. From the third period on, they were outshot 24-8, including the overtime, 16-2 in the third period alone. Has the Edmonton Oilers stormed back and eventually tied the game. They took a very uncharacteristic penalty. Tomas Nosek delayed game penalty that set up that game but the game-winning goal by Drysdale off the power play. And even the power play, even on the penalty kill on that one was a breakdown. They were very conservative against the Edmonton Oilers power play, knowing all the weapons that they had, the playmakers, Connor David just being just a name off the top of your head. And then they aggressively attacked the puck handler and completely left the backside of that play wide open for Drysdale, who was in the front of the net, unopposed and unimpeded, and was able to be Sergei Bobrovsky glove side for the game-winning goal. By the way, you can't blame. This wasn't bad, Bob. He had 42 saves last night, so he did his part for all intents and purposes. But yes, the Florida Panthers, they gotta get back to what got them there in the first place, playing physical and just wearing down their opponents, taking advantage of the high percentage shots. 31.7% shoot percentage on high-danger shots, which led the entire league. They're third in goals per game in the postseason. They're ninth in shots per game. 6 on a power play, at 23%. So these are all the things that they have to get back to. Outside of Barkov, who was a big part of the Hurricane Panthers, he had a -1. Got it in game one. He's got to be better than that. And I expect the Panthers to kind of bounce back in game two. They are a well-coached team for a reason. This is the reason why they are the 3-time defending Eastern Conference champions. But you can't have a game one like they did as far as just sitting back. That was just that was just not for the Panthers. Like, hey, we saw that when they played the Rangers last year's conference finals. This team never lets up. And even in the games that the Rangers were able to take, particularly that game 3, the shot advantages was outrageous. That it took a miracle for the Rangers to win that game in overtime. But they got to get back to playing Florida Panthers style hockey, physical brand of up and down, taking advantage of the special teams, getting the high percentage shots, working the puck around, but also being able to attack 3 lines deep. There's a reason why you traded for Brad Marchand to shove that third line. All 3 phases of hockey, they took their foot off the gas pedal, and it cost them game 1. They're gonna have to rebound for game 2. They don't want to go back to Florida down 0-2 against Oilers team. And if you look at the series, it is very evenly matched. So the slightest miscalculation, the slightest hiccup, is gonna cost you a game. And the Florida Panthers, they have just 24 hours to clean that up.
The Oilers, in their 2-year run of conference championships, have lost a grand total of 2 games post game 4 of any series. Games 5 against Vancouver in 2024 at the conference semifinals, and obviously last year's Stanley Cup. They're undefeated this year post game 4. That would be I believe I have to remember the stat, but they're undefeated post game 4 this year so far. Okay. Jay, the Oilers, they took care of 3 100-point teams to get back here. The 105-point Kings, gone. The Los Angeles Golden Knights, broke. The Dallas Stars, you're not getting away with it either. You also have that conference final loss feeling. 3 years in a row, we're calling you out too. Jay, they're already a quarter of the way there, but McJesus and the Oilers can break on through for Canada's first cup in 32 years if.
They can overcome Zach Hyman's injury. And as much as the narrative for the Oilers will center on their two centers, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, the loss of winger Zach Hyman and how Edmonton adjusts to compensate will be a huge determining factor in whether or not this edition of the Oilers can make like the Wayne Gretzky-led 1984 edition and win the Stanley Cup by beating the team they lost to the year before. Hyman left in the first period of Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals with a dislocated right wrist that required surgery and will keep him out for the entirety of the Stanley Cup Finals. He was coming off a 2-goal, 3-point performance in the Oilers' 6-1 win over Dallas in Game 3 that gave them a 2-1 lead in the series at that point. Hyman had been one of Edmonton's most productive forwards, skating with McDavid and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, as well as getting time on both the power play and penalty kill units. In 15 playoff games before the injury, he put up 11 points on 5 goals and 6 assists. He also had 111 hits to lead all players this postseason. It's ironic that just as the Oilers get their number one defense pairing back, Matthias Ekholm returned in Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals to join partner Evan Bouchard on the blue line. They have to revise their number one line. Veteran Corey Perry will take Hyman's place. As much as the loss of Hyman will hurt, Edmonton seems to have more depth at the forward spots than they did in last year's matchup with Florida, and the team overall is much better shape health-wise, starting with Evander Kane, at least for Game 1, who will move up to and join Draisaitl and Kasperi Kapanen on the Oilers' number 2 line after spending most of this postseason on the number 3 line. Kane played with a sports hernia during last year's playoffs and was a shell of his usual self. He was only able to give the Oilers 4 minutes and 39 seconds of ice time when they closed out the Stars in Game 6 of the Western Conference Final. And by the time the Stanley Cup Final was shifted to Edmonton, he was only able to play 2 games. Now, after missing the entire regular season this year due to core surgeries in September and a knee scope in January, Kane got healthy just as the Oilers' chase for Lord Stanley's chalice began. He stepped onto the ice for the first time in Game 2 of Edmonton's first-round series against the Kings and has been a difference maker for the Oilers. Like Hyman, Kane had recorded 11 points on 5 goals and 6 assists through 15 games coming into the rematch with the Panthers. Now, Kane is known for being physical and playing with an edge, and the Oilers would love it if he can be their version of Matthew Tkachuk and be a royal pain in the Panthers' ass. Another forward who is returning to health for the Stanley Cup Finals began is Connor Brown, who missed the last 2 games of the Western Conference Finals after taking a big hit in Game 3. Brown, who has 8 points on 5 goals and 3 assists in 14 playoff games, will skate on the Oilers' number 3 line with Adam Henrique and Trent Frederick, replacing Jeff Skinner, and resume his key role in the Oilers' penalty kill unit. With Brown and Kane back at full strength, Perry having a solid season with 10 points on 7 goals, tied with Draisaitl for the team lead coming into the finals and 3 assists, and Nugent-Hopkins tying Bouchard for number 3 on the team with 18 points overall on 5 goals and 13 assists. The loss of Hyman may not be as crushing as it would have been in previous postseason. Overall, the Oilers come into the finals having 7 players with at least 10 playoff points and 9 who scored at least 4 goals. Now, all that being said, I'd be remiss if I didn't lay some McDavid Draisaitl stats on you, because we all know that as important as the Oilers' depth stepping up to mitigate the loss of Zach Hyman is, everything starts and revolves around the Oilers' dynamic duo, who are number 1, McDavid, number 2, Draisaitl in playoff points coming into the finals. Head coach Christian Oblak will pair his top 2 centers on the same line when the Oilers need a spark, and so far this postseason, the two have spent almost as much time together as they have apart in 5-on-5. Check out these numbers per Natural Stat Trick. When they played on the same line, 137 minutes, 66% goals for percentage. McDavid on his own line, 142 minutes, 50% goals for percentage. Draisaitl on his own line, 136 minutes, 50% goals for percentage. But to bring it full circle, Edmonton's 5-on-5 numbers during the playoffs when McDavid and Draisaitl are off the ice are pretty impressive, as the third and fourth lines have a goals for percentage of 67%. Now, after all that talk about the Oilers needing their improved depth to step up, Still came down to the dynamic duo to win game one in overtime 4-3, though they did get help. Draisaitl scored twice, the Oilers' first goal in period one on assists from Kaplan and Wallman, and the game winner in overtime on the power play with assists from, who else? McDavid and Corey Perry. Arvidsson had their second goal in period two with assists from Podkolzin and Bouchard, and Ekholm had the game-tying goal in period three with assists from McDavid and Kapanen. With those two helpers, McDavid added to his career average of 1.73 points per game against the Panthers, including the playoffs. That's the highest rate against Florida by any player in Oilers history with a minimum of 20 games played. The Oilers are playing in the Stanley Cup final for the 9th time. That's now the most among non-original six franchises and ranks 7th overall. Edmonton is the 8th team in the NHL's expansion era, which started in 1967-68, to reach the Stanley Cup final despite losing the first 2 games of their opening playoff series. Each of the other 7 teams to do that ended up winning the Stanley Cup. The 2018 Washington Capitals, the 2014 Los Angeles Kings, who are the only team to start 0-3 and win the Cup, the 2011 Boston Bruins, the 2006 Carolina Hurricanes, the 2002 Detroit Red Wings, the 1993 Montreal Canadiens, and the 1992 Penguins. Here's some more history for you. Gretzky beating the Islanders after losing to them in 1983, and Sidney Crosby leading the Penguins over the Wings in 2009 after losing to them in 2008 were the first Cup wins for each of those legendary players. Does all of this history bode well for McDavid and company? Well, we all know the numbers, guys. Teams that win Game 1 in a best-of-7 Stanley Cup final hold an all-time series record of 65-20. That's a .765 winning percentage, including a 52-10 mark when starting the series at home. That's an .839 winning percentage. The winner of Game 1 has won the past 4 Stanley Cups. That says McDavid and the Oilers are off to a pretty good start.
13-2 in their last 15 games, by the way, which is just insane. By the way, Leon Draisaitl did not score once in the Stanley Cup Finals in 2024. So 2 times.
He was playing hurt. Not a lot of people.
Was, but still.
Well, again, another guy not healthy last year.
By the way, if you're playing and you reveal an injury after the Stanley Cup Finals, sure, you're playing hurt, but no goals, not acceptable. By the way, I'm glad that the Oilers are really gambling their future with Vander Kane. Okay. Anyway, gambling stuff one time. Okay. Let's talk about the goalie matchup real quick. Talked a lot about what their tendencies are on the last show, but I'm going to just kind of talk about some of the basic stuff to kind of move this along. Sergei Bobrovsky, I think you know that after watching Spencer Lyon start the first 3 games against the Bruins back in 2023, they brought him back in, and he always had the knock before 2023 when he had never played before beyond the second round of the Stanley Cup final of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he was 17-29 with a .313 goals against average, .901 save percentage, and no shutouts in 46 starts. That was with the Flyers, Jackets, and Panthers. That changed. Bobrovsky, they came back to beat the Bruins. They got to the Cup final again last season, of course. In 17 starts this postseason, 12-5, 211 goals against average, 912 save percentage going into Game 1. And then in the Cup final last year, when he was good, he was really good. A 125 goals against average, 955 save percentage, 1 shutout, and a 32 save performance last year in Game 1. But in those 3 games, when it went from 3-0 to 3-3, 506 goals against average and a 793 save percentage. Stopped 42 or 46 shots in the 4-3 loss last night. But again, that delay of game penalty was a killer. And at that point, the Oilers were still putting a lot of pressure on the Panthers. I know you always say the fact that if you see a team kind of struggling in overtime, they're eventually going to get that lucky break. Not when you have the delay of game penalty to put the cherry on the top. And they eventually came back and won that game and scored with a little under about a minute left to go in overtime in Game 1. So we'll see what happens. He'll, of course, be back and better than ever on Friday. And then you got Stuart Skinner, who, again, did a very interesting season for him because he's not supposed to be here. No, literally, he's not supposed to be here because of injury. 6-4, 253 goals against average this postseason, 904 save percentage, 3 shutouts. That's a biggie considering the numbers are pretty much the same this postseason. Zebor starts 14-9. That was last season. I'm sorry, 14-9 last season. 245 goals against average, 904 save percentage. Since, though, he had to come back and regain the net after an injury to Calvin Pickard in game number 3 of the Western Conference second round against the Vegas Golden Knights, he's 6-2, 173 goals against average, and a 931 save percentage. It's been interesting. The first 2 games that we mentioned, the games that they lost and putting him in that historic position. He allowed 11 goals on 58 shots. That's a 10 game percentage. But he had back-to-back shutouts to close out the Golden Knights, had another shutout against the Dallas Stars. And after game 1, when he let up 5 goals in the third period, his ups and downs were just kind of all ups. Now, he gave up the game-winning goal last year in the conference, Game 7 against Florida, on a short side shot from the right faceoff circle. That was tougher, but he did pretty well in game number 1. 32 shots, got exactly what he needed, stopping 29. Kind of got interfered on that first goal last night in order to get it. There were a lot of things that Skinner, there was a lot of traffic in there, but then was perfect in the third period, added overtime. And the defense really helped them out a lot, too. Kind of the defense that didn't see on the Panthers side. Stuart Skinner is also basically leading what is a very historic offense. We haven't seen offense like this really in the Stanley Cup playoffs in a long time. But the knock on the Oilers is they never had the goalie to back them up. Skinner's on a heater, my friends, and if he does what he's doing now, he will certainly back him up. And Lord Stanley's chalice will be going north of the border for the first time in 32 years. By the way, I forgot to mention it. There are 4 Canadians in the NBA Finals, too, which is insane to see. So it's Mathurin,
SGA.
Dort, SGA, and there's one other that I forgot.
I think it's Nemhart.
4. Yeah, Nemhart. That's right.
Nemhart, yes.
So there's
Nemhart.
4 Canadians, all in prominent spots, playing in this year's NBA Finals. Too bad it didn't help them in the Olympics. But
I'll tell you what, Rabbi. Skinner is probably as overjoyed as Evan Bouchard to have Ekholm back, because Bouchard may be the puck mover, but Ekholm is the guy who gets in the way of pucks and prevents guys from getting open shots on Skinner. So he's very happy to have him back in front of him.
And when you see a fully charged Florida Panthers team ready at you, it's kind of scary to see. And again, this is not a series that's going to have a lot of 1-0 games, I have a feeling. Let's talk about Major League Baseball in our beloved area of New York, and let's talk about another definition that I found on Wikipedia called the butterfly effect. It's a phenomenon whereby a change in a complex system can have large effects elsewhere. That phenomenon that changed the system is Juan Soto leaving the Yankees and signing the largest contract ever in MLB history with the New York Mets. The effect is former NL MVP winners signing with the Yankees in Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt. And since I don't want to stat you up here, I'll just say this go again. Soto has performed under expectations. I think Cody has performed about as much as I expected him to. And Paul Goldschmidt has done a little bit more than we expected to. Let's start with the cause of that butterfly effect. By the way, both teams are in first place and both have top 5 records right now in baseball. They're both doing pretty well for themselves at this point. But let's talk about the production on all sides. Anthony, it's been a little bit to get Soto kind of fitting into the Mets system this year. Pete Alonso has helped them a lot by having the offensive season that I think Soto thought we thought we would see Soto have. But what do you expect for Soto as the season goes on in Queens?
I would say this to my fellow Mets fans, and the quote, new Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers.
Nope. Why?
I'm going to say it. RELAX. Relax, okay? It's 2 months into the season. I think everyone has kind of played psychoanalysis as to why Juan Soto has struggled. And I just look at it as, you know what? It's an adjustment period. like any other new free agent. It's like, are we judging this man based on his playing, or we based on him judge him based on the contract he has? I think we're doing a little bit of both, but it's more so towards the money he's getting from the Mets. And it's a slow start. I kind of figured this. I've seen this before with Francisco Lindor. Yeah, as Yankee fans, you've seen it yourselves with guys like Giambi, Teixeira, who just they were terrible for the first couple of months. You just need them to stick around towards the late season stretch and the playoff in October, of course. But in the case of Juan Soto, he had a terrible series against the Chicago White Sox. He was over 14, got booed. Right now, he's batting 232. Obviously, that's not exactly a bad average you want to see. But slowly started to kind of come around. He started getting a bit of his groove. He went 4 for 9 in a 3-game series against Colorado, including a couple of home runs. Had a string of 6 consecutive games with an extra base hit that got broke last night and the Mets won. And today, drew a couple of walks, hit a couple of hard hit balls that unfortunately Dodger Stadium, for whatever reason, the ball doesn't carry all that much. So he hit into the power alleys in that stadium. According to Statcast, he's hit some of the hard. It's not because of effort. He's actually hit some of the harder balls in the majors. His exit velocity is an average of 93%, barrel rate of 15.1%, 54.7% hard hit rate, which is actually in the 90th percentile or higher. And he had an expected 302 batting average. If you take away some of the bad luck that he's had, either balls died at the warning track, good defensive players that have robbed him of hits. So those things are obviously a considered factor. But I do think, despite the fact that he has struggled, the Mets are still winning games. And I think him moving down, I think what has helped his recent surge is being moved from batting second to third. Obviously, Francisco Lindor broke a pinky toe. I don't know if you guys heard. He's listed as day to day. You gotta expect him to miss a few games because of that. So we don't know how that's gonna affect the rest of the lineup. Didn't affect Pete Alonso this afternoon. We get 2 home runs, but moving him down from second to third and kind of hitting in front of Pete Alonso, I think it's kind of helped him quite a bit as far as seeing better pitches. The way Alonso was hitting, they're not really able to hit around and pitch around Juan Soto because now you got Alonso, who has been on fire, hitting behind him. So I think that has helped him out a little bit. I do think his numbers have pick up a little more as the season progressed. The Soho shuffle was back. We've seen that a number of times in the last few games. But also he starts to get more and more comfortable with being being in the clubhouse. Carlos Mendoza's done a great job of managing his team since last year, folks. By the way, the Mets have the best record since that in that time frame. You see that he's done a good job of protecting Juan Soto, kind of taking the heat off him a little bit. Guys has kind of spoken up for him, and I do think his numbers are going to pick up a little bit. And when it does, just how dangerous this Mets lineup is going to be is going to be a big question. But if the Mets are going to do anything, they're going to need Juan Soto to pick it up. In Juan Soto's case, he's going to have to stop worrying about the expectations that came with the big deal he signed and just start going to play baseball. I think we forget that if we've seen this with time and time again with these big free agents signings, that baseball is a marathon. You're going to go through the peaks and valleys. You just play your way through it, and you just take it one game at a time. That's going to have to be Juan Soto's approach. Moving forward, put the first 2 months behind you. The season starts from June on, and just go from there, because I do think he's going to eventually get comfortable. He's going to get on a hot streak. And he has kind of picked up a little bit, but the Mets are going to need his bat evidently if they're going to do anything as far as the second half, and if they get to October, the postseason.
So, yeah. Before we get into the soda portion, and then we'll get into the PNC Music Factory, as I like to call Paul and Cody. First of all, I'm glad that Soto has brought two things over to the Mets. One, the awesome water bottle trick that he had last night
Oh,
in
you
the
saw
ninth
that,
inning.
did you? That was
Oh
pretty.
yeah, which is pretty awesome. That's why they pay him the big bucks. And number two, I am so glad that Juan Soto has brought in the bad defense from the Bronx over to Queens this year, especially
Oh yeah, that. You
considering
know what?
that
That is. You know what? If you look at the Mets this season,
it's not
that's been a
good.
bit of a play, and that's not been
Yeah.
sold. That's been the biggest problem. It's
No, I
been
know, but he brought it
yeah.
over. I'll take it too.
It played this afternoon. It showed up this afternoon as well. So yeah, there was a couple of days that you probably wish you had left in the Bronx, but it's definitely made its way to Flushing this season.
Anthony, Jay, you had a bunch of things to talk about Soto before you talked about Goldschmidt and Bellinger.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was doing my research, I knew Anthony was going to have Soto covered, so I wasn't necessarily going to go too deep in anything to follow him up. But I came across this really great piece on MLB.com by Mike Petriello on June 3rd, where he took a really deep dive into Soto's stats to see if he could determine what was behind the slow start. And as a next-gen stat geek and the show's resident stat king, I found it pretty interesting. So check this out. Soto, his expected batting average is in the 91st percentile. His expected on-base percentage, 99th percentile. His expected slugging percentage, 98th percentile. Exit velocity, 95th percentile. Hard hit percentage, 95th percentile. Walk rate, 99th percentile. All of that says Soto is still Soto. If there was a meaningful drop in skill, you'd see at least some of that in those numbers. Even the one thing that might stand out, a 2 mile per hour decline in bat speed, merely takes him from elite to, considerably above average. But, the decrease might be partially, though not fully explained by Soto's decrease in pull rate, which went from 45% last year playing half his games in Yankee Stadium to 38% this year. Since bat speed reaches its peak out front and Soto's making contact 2.5 inches deeper this year, but also when there's not a single player in the game with a larger gap, 0.159 between his expected slugging percentage, 589, and his actual slugging percentage, 430, than Soto, and only one player with a larger gap, 0.067 between his expected batting average, 301, and his actual batting average, 234, than Soto, it's also something you can't ignore. Soto's grounder rate has gone up from 45% last year to 52%, though that's regularly bounced around in that range throughout his career. The larger issue is that combined with his lower pull rate, he's pulling it in the air, the most valuable kind of contact when hit hard, only 11% of the time, down from 19% last year. But it was last year that was the outlier, not this year. And even when he's hitting those high-value balls this year, he's getting less production out of them. MLB's Anthony DiComo wrote this past weekend in regards to Soto's May. In the eyes of many around the team, he had become too passive at the plate, allowing himself to fall into too many pitchers counts. Now we're talking. Soto in May offered at only 53% of pitches in the zone, tied for third lowest rate of any month of his career. And among the 3 other months at the bottom of the list, 2 of them, September in 24 and August in 2018, were his weakest month of that particular season. When he doesn't swing enough, he can't do damage enough. It's obviously good to lay off bad pitches, and no one does that better than Soto. Not only does he have the lowest chase rate in 2025, his May was one of the lowest chase rate months anyone's had in the last decade, a skill which clearly hasn't waned as as the numbers clearly show. But when you have a swing like his, there is such a thing as being too patient too. In May, Soto took 0-0 pitches in the zone 74% of the time, second highest month of his career. Petriello summed up this, what I just laid out for you as follows. Their quote, "There's no real evidence Soto is getting pitched differently. There's no real evidence there's a meaningful skill decline. The main evidence is that this feels for all the world exactly like what Lindor went through his first year as a Met, which is to say a rough adjustment, except all the underlying metrics say there's no adjustment at all, other than perhaps letting his truly elite plate discipline keep him from unleashing swings at enough pitches he can damage," end quote. Who knows? And these are my words now. Maybe the reception he got in the Bronx for all 3 games of round 1 of the Subway Series messed with his head more than he's willing to admit, even to himself. Or maybe Soto will heat up once the weather does. Either way, I don't think there's any reason to panic. I agree with you on that. I think by season's end, Juan Soto will have put up Juan Soto-like numbers. Now, for the actual assignment I was given, talking about, as Rabbi just coined them, PNC, Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger, who were Soto's replacements. Now, we've talked about it ad nauseum on the show. Juan Soto had one of the best seasons in Yankees history last year. 288, 419, 580, 69 slash line, 989 OPS, 181 weighted runs created, 41 homers, 109 RBI, AL leading 128 runs scored, career high, 7.9 baseball reference wins above replacement, and 3rd place finish in the AL MVP voting. So when he elected to take Steve Cohen's money instead of Hal Steinbrenner's and crossed the RFK, aka Tri-Borough Bridge, to play for the Mets, my first thought was that Yankees GM Brian Cashman better channel his inner Brad Pitt as Billy Beane. Y'all know the line from Moneyball. You're still trying to replace Giambi. Insert Soto's name here. I told you we can't do it. Now, what we might be able to do is recreate him in the aggregate. It's one of my favorite lines in the movie. I get teased about it, but I love it. Cash did just that. He knew there wasn't a single hitter out there that could, on his own, replace that type of production. So we went out and got 2 hitters, as Rabbi alluded to in his opening, both former NL MVPs, who he hoped would replace Soto in the aggregate in first baseman Paul Goldschmidt and outfielder Cody Bellinger. Now, neither was coming off a huge 2024. Goldschmidt looked nothing like the NL MVP he was in 2022. He put up just a 245, 302, 414 slash line. Those are all career low numbers, as was his 716 OPS, his 100 even weighted runs created plus, and his 1.3 baseball reference wins above replacement. He had just 22 homers and only 65 RBI. Bellinger, the 2023 NL MVP, had a slightly better 2024, 266, 325, 426 slash line, 751 OPS, 109 weighted runs created plus, 2.2 baseball reference wins above replacement, but he only had 18 homers and just 78 RBI. I'm sure there were plenty of Yankee fans who thought Cashman was nuts. This is who we got to replace Soto? Well, check out the numbers for the first 2 months of the season for the 2 new Yankee hitters as compared to Soto's numbers in the same time frame with the Mets. Bellinger, through May 31st, 253, 324, 443 slash line, 776 OPS, 8 homers, 32 RBI, 29 runs scored, 115 weighted runs created plus. He had a horrible April, 204, 281, 357, 78, 22% below Major League Baseball average in terms of weighted runs created plus. He has cranked it up in May. The 15-game hitting streak he had from May 3rd through the 21st, where he slashed 377, 441, 689, 1130 OPS, 5 homers, 13 RBI, and 12 runs scored. Has his May 302, 370, 531, 902 OPS, 5 homers, 16 RBI, 15 runs scored. That weighted runs created practically doubled, 152. Goldschmidt through May 31st, 338, 394, 495, 89 OPS, 6 homers, 28 RBI, 38 runs scored, 152 weighted runs created. He's had solid months in each of the first 2. April, 356, 403, 475, 878 OPS, 2 homers, 13 driven in, 17 scored, 150 weighted runs created plus. May, 315, 382, 522, 904 OPS, 4 homers, 15 driven in, 21 scored, 153 weighted runs created plus. The 2 of them combined through 531, 297, 360, 470 slash line. That's an 830 OPS. They have 14 homers, 60 RBI, 67 runs scored. The weighted runs created plus 134. Soto through 531, 231, 357, 413 slash line, 770 OPS, 9 homers, 27 ribbies, 36 runs scored, weighted runs created plus 120. He has only gotten worse. His May was worse than his April. And as far as Anthony threw the numbers out, so I'm not going to repeat them. And as far as the impact on winning goes, through the first 2 months of the 2024 season, the Yankees were 40-19. It's a .678 winning percentage with a plus 101 run differential. First place in the AL East by 2 games. Through the first 2 months of 2025, Yankees are 35-22, .614 winning percentage, plus 94 run differential. That took a hit when they gave up 18 runs to the Dodgers. In first place in the AL East by 5.5 games. The record and run differential is down a bit, but the team is exactly where we were a year ago at this time, in first place in the AL East. Yes, it helps that Aaron Judge is off to a prodigious start in 2025 as compared to his pathetic start in 2024. But at the end of the day, I think we can say that Paul Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger have replaced Soto in the aggregate so far through the first 2 months of the season, and have done it quite well, in fact.
By the way, that pathetic start was only 1 month, by the way, and then he did. By the way, I said this to Anthony, and I'm going to say this again. Barring injury, have you ever seen a more obvious AL and NL MVP again this year? In
Nope.
Vegas lines, by the way, Judge is currently, and I'm not betting you, a minus 10,000 favorite for MVP in the AL.
Okay, wait, hold on a second. Minus 10,000. Put that into dollars and cents for me, Rabbi, since I know you're a
I can't put it into dollars and cents since I only pulled it up now, but that's insane.
Like if you drop $100 on
you basically win $1 more, essentially. Shohei Ohtani is minus 300, and again, that's also insane to say in the beginning of the year, at this point of the year, in June, that you basically don't really have any benefit of picking Shohei Ohtani as the MVP. It's been insane on both sides of the ball for both.
By the way, how cool was it to see both of them homer to lead off their respective top of bomb having the first innings last weekend?
Yeah, thank God it was the Friday game and not the Saturday game. Okay, so I'm going to just talk really quickly about why both teams are where they are right now, and I can talk about the setup. But you know, the way that these teams are constructed pitching-wise is the reasons why they're here right now. When Garrett Cole went out for the year, it turned out that Max Fried, who was supposed to be a 1A or 1B or even like a high 2, is probably right now the Cy Young winner if you get to hear 7-1 with a 1.92 ERA. And again, health has always been his issue, but right now he is having as good of a season as possible. And just the way that the bullpen has been done up by Brian Cashman, outside of Devin Williams, which we'll get into right now, Mark Leiter Jr. has been fantastic. Once they put Luke Weaver, who is out for 4 to 6 weeks, into the closing role, he's been fantastic. Jonathan Weisinger is going to get a little bit of time. He had a good night tonight. So that team is in pretty good. And they've had good pitching staffs. Carlos Rodon is also pitching probably the best he has in his entire career. That's the reason why the beard rule worked, because Rodon's beard is probably as much better than a clean-shaven Rodon. Just saying, it's the facts and all that stuff. And for the Mets, they kind of kept most of the team together from last year. They have a lot of injuries. They still don't have Sean Manaea back, who was really the ace of this team last year. They lost Luis Severino. They get Griffin Canning out of nowhere. He had 2 bad starts, but he pitched a gem last night in LA. This is a guy who had 6 wins all of last year. He has 6 wins now. He was 6-13 a year ago with the Angels. He's 6-2 with the Mets and having an under 3 ERA. The stats in pitching are insane for both teams. Any one that I can give you right now, they're going to be in the top 10. Earned runs given. Mets, number 1. Yankees, number 7. Home runs allowed, which has always been a problem for both teams. Mets, number 2. Yankees, number 6. Strikeouts, Yankees, number 3. Mets, number 5. Whip, that's the one I think that the Mets are not good at. That's the only one they're not top 10 in, but it's pretty close. Yankees, number 5. Mets, number 12. Earned run out, average allowed. Yankees, number 1. Mets, number 4. So when you look at this team's pitching is a little bit of a different story now when you get into the postseason with how quickly you have a hook to your starters, but both teams have done a really good job with their rotations this year. And if there's going to be a part right now outside of the Mets bullpen, which has been kind of fledgling a little bit outside of Edwin Diaz, who also had a blown save earlier this week against LA, if there's one thing that both teams are going to kind of depend on, it's the Yankees with how they've been getting great contributions from Fried and Rodon too. I know, Jay, you've been a Rodon denier for a while, but
Not
there's nothing
denier,
I
but
can.
I have been a pretty harsh critic of him, and
This season
look,
I can't criticize anything.
no,
Honestly, it's been his best
absolutely
season
not.
by far.
Absolutely not. And I think it was, and look, you can say maybe, fear the beard, maybe it's makes him
It's the
feel
beard. I'm
more
telling
like
you, it's the beard.
himself. I know he's made some adjustments with his pitching. He's tweaked how he's using his stuff this year. I mean, the numbers are evident. He's been the Carlos Rodon we're seeing right now is the guy we were expecting to see when he signed on last year.
2 years ago, but yeah.
2 years ago, sorry. But you talk about Fried, Rabbi, and look, I talked about him in the run up to the season. But he pitched another gem tonight in the win over Cleveland. 6 innings, 1 hit, 0 runs, 7 strikeouts, upped his record to 8-1, dropped his ERA down to 1.78 But here's the thing that really jumped out at me. Tonight was the 7th time that Fried has taken the ball following a Yankees loss. The team is 7-0 in those games. Fried personally is 6-0 with a 0.57 ERA in those starts. If there is a better definition of an ace, of a Cy Young candidate, of a stop rotation, a number one guy atop your rotation, I don't think there's a better definition or more of a exhibit A than that.
And we've talked about it too, just giving the Mets some love too. The way that they've almost seemingly had a pitching lab over the last few years. David Peterson having about as good of a season as he did last year, if not better. Kodai Senga really becoming an ace again. They just getting Paul Blackburn back.
Clay Holmes.
And Clay Holmes has been excellent in his return to starting pitching. And again, the one in sad status with all the good teams in baseball right now, and there have been some good teams out there. Only 3 teams in baseball have not been swept this entire season. The Yankees, the Mets, and for some fucking reason, the team that's 9.5 back in the Central and the NL, the Reds. I don't understand it, but it's true. Okay. Time for a final rant. I know you may not want to hear it, but you're going to get it anyway. Okay, I don't know about you, but if it's this time of the year, I'm thinking of the college football playoff.
Really?
No, just me? Just me?
You.
Okay. Anyway, news came out. It's fine. This is what I do. Anyway, news came out in late May that one of the major issues of the 2024 CFP will be resolved by the top 4 seeds going to the 4 highest ranked teams instead of conference champions. I like it. What a concept. Rant over. No. Rant not over. That's what a rant is. Because did you know that this was the last year of the 12-team CFP contract? Because the idea was so quickly enacted, it only had a 2-year cycle before modifications. Those are surprisingly not agreed to yet. Now, getting changes from the CFP with the agreeing of conference commissioners is about as easy as getting a Long Island family to agree to not talk about politics at Thanksgiving dinner. It's just a matter of time, but you're going to be worn down, and whoever blinks first loses. Now, let's meet the people at the dinner table. First, we have Tony Petitti, the conference commissioner of the Big 18. I mean Big 10. Okay. Just let us talk. In what will seemingly be a larger bracket starting in the 2026 season, Tony wanted a simple 4-4-2-2-1 model. No, this isn't the latest theorem to solving an algebra problem. It's auto bids for the 4 major conferences, 4 for the Big 10 and SEC, 2 for the ACC and Big 12, and 1 for not any of those that I've just mentioned, with the 3 at-large field for those other teams. Not any of those I just mentioned. And a 3 at-large field for those other teams, whether a major conference or not. And while all of this seems really well and good, take the true bad of this. you're not really taking it out of the hands of the committee. There's always a ton of ties, especially when you're playing an 8 or 9 game schedule. And honestly, after seeing what Indiana did last year in the CFP, that's your fourth team in the Big Ten. Are we really clamoring for that team to get it again? I'm not losing sleep if they don't. A committee might work because they can't be bought off. Not at all. Oh, what's this? Oh, yeah. I said they can't be bought off. Let me just put that money away. Okay. Now here comes our SEC commissioner, Greg Sankey. Now you can boo.
Ooh.
Thank you. All right. The life of every party, Greg Sankey. Owner of a whopping 0 teams in last year's CFP final and only 1 in the Final Four, thanks to the new kid in town, Texas, Sankey, you may have gotten that huge light bulb in his head, went from supporting that model and basically saying, nah, we're good. We should just take the 16 best and not have allocations. Sure, the fact if we did that a year ago, if it was a 16-team model, the SEC would have had 3/8 of the 16-team field. That's 6 out of 16. This scenario would mostly punish the group of 5 teams. The influence might keep voters from getting a team anywhere near the top 16. If you told Mr. Sankey that they can have their own playoff with their own champion opposite of those other scrub conferences, Sankey would run as fast to that idea as any 6-year-old would even do it. This is a bad idea for the game and would make SEC conference play even more worthless than it might be now. Remember the SEC championship that saw both teams for Texas and Georgia end up being top 5 seeds anyway? And it took a little fun out of the SEC championship game. And then, because you want more commissioner talk, I know you do, Sankey then decided to throw shade at ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips and Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. And don't say you even knew who the Big 12 commissioner's name was before this by saying.
I did.
Yeah, so, okay, you did for research, but I'm talking to the crowd here, not to 2 other people. Okay. They said he doesn't want to be lectured about the good of the game. Also, the ACC and Big 12 won a 5+11 format, 5 conference champs, and the next 11 at-larges. Although the Big 12 would have been a 1 big league if they went by that model last year instead of the 2 guaranteed teams by the 4-4-2-2-1 model. So just remember that Big 12 commissioner, Brett Yormark. Yeah, that's it. Okay, I had to look it up again myself, but we're good. Okay. In conclusion, this Thanksgiving dinner will be better for all of us if we have a resolution sooner or later, whether it be by the leadership of the Big Ten, the delusion of the SEC, and the look at us guys of the ACC and Big 12, or those other guys. 2026 and beyond needs a path sooner or later when it comes to the SEC, and possibly, Jay, as I throw it to you, getting the craziest tournament ever incoming?
You know, it's funny, guys, when Rabbi and I were putting the show together and he kind of told me where he was going with this rant, I'm like, okay, I'm sure, I'll have a way to, kind of put my own 2 cents in. But the more I kind of read, and the 3 of us all tend to read similar publications when we're doing our research, the more I got pissed off. Now, Rabbi did his rant somewhat tongue-in-cheek. Mine's not going to be that so much. So, because after all of you said, all the things that you just laid out, Rabbi, to me, see, this is why college football fans can't have nice things. For years, I bemoaned the fact that football's champion was determined by the media and the polls as opposed to on the field. Then we got the BCS. And when we did get an actual game to decide the national champion, the 2 teams were basically decided by a computer program. So, despite having a game, no one was really enthralled with the system. Then we got the CFP, which had rankings and a selection committee. And just like college basketball, football had a Final Four. And for a while, that was good enough. And then the SEC and the Big Ten started poaching teams from other conferences as realignment took hold, completely messing with the landscape, culminating in the demise of the Pac-12, which I am still pissed off about. Can you tell? But all of this madness, and not really the good kind like we have in March, led us to the field of 12. And I thought, finally, college football was headed down the right road with a true postseason tournament that didn't make the regular season worthless. Yeah, the way it all shook out might not have been the way it was originally intended, with Indiana making the field while Alabama did not, and all the arguing that went on about that. The SEC apparently is still arguing about it. And Boise State and Arizona probably shouldn't have been the number 3 and number 4 seeds. And yeah, we got some blowouts in the first round, but the Final Four and title game matchups we wound up with weren't bad. All in all, not a bad start to this expanded version of the CFP. In my humble opinion, all that needed to be corrected was seeding the teams based on the CFP's rankings. Conference champs would still get their AQ bids, just like with March Madness, but it wouldn't necessarily translate into a first-round bye. And then the SEC and the Big Ten just had to make it all about them, as Rabbi just said. To hell with what's best for college football. The CFP has to go to 14 or 16 teams immediately. Can't not have an overabundance of SEC and Big Ten teams in the field. Hence this push by Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti to ram that 4-4-2-2-1 playoff model, which would give the Big Ten and the SEC 4 bids each, 2 for the ACC and Big 12, 1 for the Group of Five's highest ranked conference champ. Ram that down everyone's throats. In the 14-team version, that leaves 1 bid for either Notre Dame if it's ranked in the top 14 or for an at-large selection. In the 16-team format, you could have 2 or 3 at-large selections depending on Notre Dame. Are you kidding me? Really? Really? The amount of ego on this guy is ridiculous. Petitti believes that because the size of his conference, he deserves the most AQ bids, regardless of whether the records of those teams are CFP worthy. Petitti wants this so he can have play-in games during the Big Ten championship weekend. 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, for those extra automatic bids he feels his 18-team behemoth of a conference is entitled to. Are you fracking kidding me? Joe Rexrode of The Athletic said it best in his May 30th piece, quote, "And don't ask why we must move on from the 12-team format that worked quite well last season and will complete an era of 2 years after the 2025 season. Just chalk everything up in this industry to greed, arrogance, and incompetence, and you're probably in the neighborhood." End quote. And hey, if you don't like my tweak to the current system, as Rabbi mentioned, the Big 12 came up with a solution that should work for everyone. 5 automatic qualifying bids for the 5 highest-ranked conference champs, and the rest of the field is made up of the highest-ranked at-large selections, 9 or 11, depending on whether the field is 14 or 16 teams, with playoff byes being the primary reward for winning your conference title game. The ACC is apparently on board with this 5+11 format, and the SEC seems to be leaning towards coming on board with that. But, of course, there are sticking points. First, the Big Ten wants the SEC to change their scheduling and play 9 conference games like they do, which Greg Sankey doesn't seem to be on board with. They just don't want to give up their FCS cupcake games, which, of course, pisses the Big Ten off. Second, both the SEC and the Big Ten want to get rid of the selection committee. Petitti wants to turn it into a seeding committee, and Sankey seems to want it gone completely because in the first year of the expanded playoff field, the committee seemed more focused on the number of losses teams had as opposed to the strength/difficulty of their schedule. This goes back to the SEC whining about Indiana getting in and not Alabama. Neither one of these guys seems interested in tweaking the selection process by simply making sure that the committee fully grasps the importance of it and is given the best and clearest way possible to value the strength of schedule metric. All this pettiness and selfishness between the SEC and the Big Ten just leaves the other conferences and fans like me frustrated as you know what, and does nothing to truly improve college football's postseason now that it's finally going down the right road. Like I said at the top, this is why college football fans can't have nice things.
You notice how we never complain about Division 1 AA, Division 2 or 3 playoff system, because it seems like they can get to a postseason, get a playoff tournament. Nobody complains. Works for everyone. Why is the Division 1A can never figure this one out?
Money!
Look, it's obviously, it's money, it's ego. It's the SEC and the Big Ten overcompensating and having a penis measurement contest to see who.
I did not expect that line in that one.
Almost went to my first on-air spit take.
Hey, look, my confidence is bigger. I should get better, more confidence if they want to. What a joke. I mean, that's just pretty much what this is. It's like, you may tell me we have, look, no system is going to be perfect right out of the gate. That is pretty obvious. We're a big fan of March Madness in March. Not all of us were on board with having a Spanish playoff field, but we got to play the 4 playing games, which in recent years have been actually very compelling. And it's given us a March Madness feel before the actual tournament. So it's actually added to the drama that is the NCAA tournament. Look, college football, I get it. Indiana, they got in. It was a great start in the regular season. They completely laid it in the postseason. I get that. But SEC, get over it, all right? Alabama didn't get in. You whine and whine all you want. Nobody told the Crimson Tide, sorry, Miss Sharon, to be whining.
Happy birthday, Miss Sharon. Thanks for criticizing the side so quickly after the birthday. So
yeah, but nobody told the Crimson Tide to wet the bed in big games down the stretch, or to the scheduled cupcake opponents. Which also, that's why the SEC don't want to expand their conference play, because they have to give up those really soft games against Brown University or some other Defy Institute for all I care. But then it's pretty much to rack up the wins. But yes, it comes down to money. It comes down to ego. And college football, and most of us, the fans, are the ones that are hurt the most by this. If I'm a team, look, like, you're the ACC, you're the Big 12, you're an independent, like Notre Dame, or maybe Army or Navy. This is this is an insult, a slap in the face, because it's intentionally trying to give you the raw deal and cut you out of the big pieces of pie. Pretty much what that's all about. I would be furious too. And how bad it is when the coaches in the SEC vehemently goes against this idea. That should tell you right out of the gate. Leave it alone. 5 at-large bids, 5 at-large teams, plus, 5 conference winners, 6 at-large bids. Seems pretty common sense. Seems pretty straightforward. Why is it that everyone can't get on board? Beats the hell out of me, but this is college football for what? God knows how long, as long as I've been on this planet, we've gone from a poll to a MacBook to 10, 11 people in business suits to basically deciding who should be national champion or have the right to play for a national championship. Now we have a system that says, let the players decide it on the field, and we still can't get this shit right. I don't understand. Guys, help me out here. For those who for those who are watching on Facebook, YouTube, our esteemed fellow colleagues on the sports lines, feel free to text me and help me out to solve this colossal clusterfuck. And it's the second time I've come on this show, by the way, because it is a mess. It is unbelievable that they can never get this right. But every other division football in the NCAA can get it right, except the one that draws the most attention on Saturdays. It is unfreaking believable that we're going through this all over again. Just 2 years removed from going through this the first time.
Actually, so the third rant ended up being better than the first 2 rants, actually, when you think about it. That was the most ranty of the rants, and he didn't even say he was doing a rant. So there you go. All right, that ends it for tonight. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I am the guy who will never think about the words penis measuring contest ever again, and also a guy who cried when the NBA on TNT ended Saturday night.
Oh,
some people cry at tearjerkers. I cry at the NBA on TNT ending. I don't care. Not ashamed to admit that.
Amen.
Have a good cry yourself and go to facebook.com/onthesportslines, but do it after you cry. And youtube.com/onthesportslines to see us live or on demand. And Jay, on that other form of media known as X or Twitter, where nothing of note really happened today in any way, shape, or form.
Our handle on that platform is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show, like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a terrific piece by Grace Rayner of The Athletic, telling the story of four-star Michigan recruit Bear McWhirter, an offensive lineman at Cass High School in Cartersville, Georgia, who is using his name, image, and likeness to raise money and awareness for adoption and fostering through the Brother Bear Foundation, which he launched after his family adopted two little girls over a 5-year period. Adding two little sisters to his family really changed his perspective on life and made him want to help others adopt and give more children a chance at a family. It's a heartwarming piece, and the read is very much worth your time.
Definitely go take a look at it if you get a chance on the ONTH Sports Lines Twitter account. We'll be back in a few weeks. Jay needs to take a little bit of time to go to therapy after the news of today with Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers. I'm sure I won't be mentioning that anytime more soon. Good night, everybody, and see you in a few weeks.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.